Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today on this video, let's talk about walking baits and the two different styles of walking baits that you're generally going to see on the market. You've got the pretty traditional walking bait. This is a Zara spook style bait. This is actually a spook. and then you've got a pencil popper style of bait. The differences are pretty obvious. You know, they both do about the same thing. They have a nice side-to-side walking action, you know, walk the dog as we call it. And both of them are pretty long, elongated. They cast pretty far, and they create a lot of commotion on the surface. However, you can tell that the pencil popper has more of a popper concave style mouth, while the traditional spook style walking bait does not. Now there's a lot of different baits on the market in each of these categories. In the pencil popper category, I'm holding up the Yozuri 3DB pencil popper 135 right now. And of course I showed off the Zara spook on the traditional walking bait side, but you've also got like the shower blows. Berkeley makes a good pencil popper style of bait. There's a lot of different baits in this category, and there's even more in the traditional walking bait category. So you got a lot to choose from, but the main question that I always ask myself, and you're probably asking yourself as well if you're watching this video, is what are the key differences between these two, and when would I choose one over the other? And this is something that, you know, whenever I'm learning a new category of bait and there's two different, baits that are very similar, this is a question that's at the top of my mind. You know, buzz baits and whopper ploppers are a really good example. And I've talked a lot about the differences between those two, even though a lot of the situations you might want to throw those baits overlap. One of them will do something better than the other at certain times. So same thing goes for these style walking baits. So let's go ahead and start with the Zara spook style, you know, the traditional style walking bait. This style bait generally has a more forward moving action. What I mean by that is it creates more of a Z pattern as it goes along. Okay, so it's actually moving forward at a good clip as you work this bait side to side. That's one of the things you get out of this bait. It also does create a lot of commotion on the surface. Usually they have a pretty substantial rattle in these baits, and yeah, it's a great bait to cover water. Now, the pencil style topwater is very similar in that it does create a lot of commotion. It walks side to side, and it allows you to cover a lot of water as well. However, the pencil popper creates that concave mouth that's on this style bait creates more of a spinning action, and it also, because you have that concave mouth, it allows this bait to have a more dramatic side-to-side action, and it kind of like stays in place a whole lot more. So like it'll stay, you can make this thing just walk side to side 180 degrees and just remain in one spot for, you know, quite a while if you know how to work it, if you put slack into that line. So it doesn't have as much forward movement as you work it, which means that you can work it side to side, you know, more in a, you know, if you're pulling it a foot forward, you can work that thing side to side more in that foot of forward movement. All right. And another thing that it does is I think that these style baits create a lot more commotion on the surface, a lot more splashing, and they generally have a more, you know, loud rattle system in them. And you can also tell that pretty much all of them will have this big old bud on them. They got a pretty large badonkadonk on those things. And what that really does for you is generally it's going to aid in casting distance. You can cast a a pencil popper style bait a long distance because it's all that weight forward design. Now you can get a walking baits cast really far too, but you can get some extra distance out of these and cast into the wind a little bit better, which is actually a good point to make as far as the differences. So we'll just stay with the pencil popper. The pencil popper, like I said, it casts better, so it's better in the wind from a casting perspective, but also it's better in the wind, in my opinion. Like, we've got some breeze picking up right now, and this morning I went out and caught some fish, you know, in a pretty stiff breeze. It was kind of like this. And the reason why I chose the pencil popper style of topwater is because it creates more sound and splashing on the surface. So I feel like it draws fish better in windier conditions. You know, both of these will work really good. In fact, the Zara Spook has been well known as one of the best topwater baits in fairly windy conditions, but the pencil popper is better, in my opinion, for very windy conditions. So if you're faced with like, you know, calm conditions, you might want to go with the Zara Spook. So although you can work both of these baits in the same situation and be fairly successful, really the biggest difference is the type of conditions that you're facing. If you're looking to draw fish up on windier days when you need a little bit more sound and noise and splashing motion, this might be the deal for you. If you're looking for something that, you know, maybe you got a little bit of a breeze, but it's not like a super prominent breeze, so you don't want to make as much noise, a traditional walking bait may work better. And also, you know, if you feel like, you know, you need less, you need to keep your bait in the strike zone a little bit longer while you're working the bait, a pencil popper can also do really well because it can stay in that spot a lot longer while still going side to side. So anyways, guys, the tackle that you use with these two things are pretty much exactly the same. I like to use a high-speed gear ratio bait casting reel with braided line. I generally use like a 30-pound test or even 40-pound test Seagar Tactics braid as a main line, and then I always add a length of monofilament, a very short leader. You know, it doesn't even have to be any longer than the actual bait that you're using, but you need that heavier monofilament to, well, it's not heavier because the pound test rating is going to be a lot lighter. I generally use like 15 or 20 pound test as that leader, but it adds a very rigidness to that line setup that you have, so you're not having that very soft and flexible braid tangle in the hooks constantly, you know, especially with the pencil popper, because it has such a dramatic side-to-side action. You can even turn it more than, you know, 180 degrees. A lot of times you'll catch braided line in those hooks, but monofilament is a little bit more stiff and rigid, and it tends to stay out of the hook. So that's my line setup, and then I use a 7.3 medium heavy. Both of them are going to be pretty much exactly the same as far as the tackle, and again, a lot of the situations overlap, but those are the things that I really pay attention to when I'm deciding whether to use a traditional walking style bait or a concave nose pencil popper style bait. So I will put all this stuff in the description below as far as the links, you know, the products that I like for both of these categories and the tackle that I use. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'm going to see you out on the water. Trust the process.